Hello, my name is Sam Garrison. This is my video application for WBC Team USA. I am a butcher out of Texas. I've spent the last 4.5 years at Salt and Thyme under Brian Butler. Currently, I'm in Germany. I'm doing an apprenticeship under Fleischermaster Simon Ellery. Mostly making sausages, doing salamis, things of that nature. So I don't have a lot of access to whole carcass right now. I think I could bring a lot to the table in terms of breaking as well as finish cutting. So I'm actually going to send in a couple old videos that I was able to take at Salt and Thyme, and hopefully these will be enough to qualify me to compete for the team in September. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Here's a quick hog break. I'm going to be counting up to the 5th rib, breaking it in between rib 5 and 6. Being careful to kind of watch my angle so I get some nice full pork chops. Just pop that guy right off. Now I'm going to pull the flank down. I'm trying to pull this flank down to where I have access to that first vertebrae past the curve. That's where I'm going to do my break. And while I'm pulling this down, there's some stuff in that flank that I want to retail, such as some of the pork skirts as well as the pork buffet. So I'm being careful not to rip any of that stuff. Now I'm gonna go in at that first vertebrae past the turn, make my cut perpendicular to the ground, and there's a hog break. All right, so this is a pork shoulder broken between the 5th and 6th rib. I'm gonna start off by removing the trotter. Alright, so now that trotter's off, typically what we would do with those guys is, maybe we would split them, sell them in retail, or, maybe we'd use them to make a stock or a gelatin of some kind. Now I'm going to be taking off the hock. Great for stews. Maybe we'll brine and smoke this guy, just depending on what our need is. So from here, I'm going to go ahead and saw through those first 5 ribs. I'm using that vein in the shoulder as a reference. Remove those guys. Typically we retail those as a slab rib. I'll remove the first rib, sell rib 2 through 5 as a little 4-rib rack. So I'm just popping that off, being careful not to go too deep to remove any of the brisket, because again, that pork brisket is something we can retail. So that is what I'm doing here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and just actually split the butt section from the outside shoulders section. I'll deal with that outside section here in a little bit. But for now I'm just focused on doing a retail square butt. So I'm here just jointing it. Alright, now that is jointed off, I'm going to go ahead and work on removing the cage. So what's left of those, the atlas bone and those top couple vertebrae in the neck. And then I'll be working down towards the ribs to remove that whole spine and rib section off of this square butt. So just slowly pulling that back. At Salt and Thyme we try to use everything, so I definitely will remove all the intercostal rib meat from this cage before throwing those in the stock bone pile to either be sold as retail stock bones or to be made into a stock to then be sold as just pork stock. Alright, so now that I got that cage off, I pretty much have the square butt ready. I just want to go ahead and remove any of the blood that's remaining on that neck portion. I want to remove any excess fat, so you'll see I'm going to trim off a bit of that fat on the side there, as well as just keeping an eye out for any glands. Typically there's that gland up there in the neck that I'm going to be looking for. as well as any veins or any blood that's kind of just left over. So I'm just cleaning this thing up now, making it look pretty. Typically, you know, I'll go into the retail case with this thing either whole or split, but you know, always cut down to size according to the customer's needs. So that is the finished square butt there. Ready to go. So just like boning it out, so we're always going to start at the tail. So chuck eyes, when you're seaming out a chuck roll, you start at the tail to roll the chuck eye off. When you're boning out a ribeye, you want to start at the tail and bone out up towards this section of it. And then when you're peeling lifters, you want to start at the tail also. So this is going to just have a natural seam, so we're going to find that seam, and then we're going to take it off. So you can see you got your ribeye here. Complexus, longissimus dorsi, spinalis, your star, your lifter cap, your shoulder blade, and then these are more lifter muscles here on the other side. So if you look here, you can see your ribeye, you can see the seam. So it's way down here, but then it's going to come up and it's going to connect here. So you can already see I barely touched it, it's already starting. So then I'm going to come up under here, and then here you kind of want to look. You might be able to see it, you might not. It's somewhere around here, but if I follow this line, that's going to get me where I want to be. So you can slash into your lifter all you want, as long as you don't fuck up your ribeye, you know. So you always want to be like a little more out than in, because if you're in, you got a chance of nicking that rib roll. And once you get this thing started, start at the tail, you work it across. This end is always going to be a little harder. It never wants to seam out quite as well as this end. And that's, I think, there's just more muscles in here for the separation. So look, I'm like really pulling. It's fine, as long as you don't cut into the ribeye. You can pull pretty hard. And I'm just opening that seam up. Once you get down to the table, you just clip it off. So that's your lifter. So we still need to bone it out. We still need to take the paddywhack out. So I'm going to start with the feathers. These also have feather bones on them, part of the spine. So just hugging those bones and pulling that off. Then for the paddywhack, you just get this thing started. See that right there? So that you'll find these on the rib eyes and on chuck rolls sometimes. So you always want to look out for these because they're just really big and sinewy. Pull that. I call it a paddywhack. It's sinew. It's like it's a tendon basically. All right, so now we're here. Now I'm gonna bone it out. So just bone out the whole thing, sticking to those ribs. And these will almost seam out. And hey, remember how you tore yours up a little bit? Yeah. So this, I just kind of did it. The way you avoid that is to get the tip of your knife on the rib. Yeah, like following the rib, and then when you kind of open it up and go in for the next one, and you'll get a pretty smooth.
I'm like scared to get close. Henry, I think it's time for that house party. You should take all of the things from the event and just take it to your house.
And once you get up to here, I like to just turn it.
Keep frozen.
Popping those guys off.
Just do it today. Like right now.
And then when I do rib roast or rib eyes, I like to take off a little bit of silver right here because it'll just eat a little better. You just pop those guys off. And then, since I'm doing a rib roast, I'm gonna just check my line here and just go ahead and trim that whole, like pre-trim that whole tail, because I already know I'm gonna end up trimming a lot of that off, so I can save time and not have to do it from every steak. And do it as a roast. And then face it. I'll ask him which end he wants. Ask him if he wants it tied. All that shit. So he wants loin ends. The funnest part of this is going to be trying to cut it down to size and not fuck it up. Can't imagine it'll be larger than 4 strings. Is that what I'm hearing right now?
Exactly what it sounds like.
Oh, damn. All right, 17. So here you go, Luke. You struggle with this a little bit, so it's always just math, right? So, okay, this thing's 17 and a half. That's about half, so what's that? 8, 9, 8 and a half, yeah. Okay, so that's about 8. So now if I try to half this, that should be about 4. He said 4 to 5. Or did he say 5 to 6?
Yeah,
I'm gonna go here and he's gonna be happy. So I went for about 6, so let's see how I did. About 7, it's about that. Like, if you break it down like that and just kind of do the math, it's no big deal. All right, so here's a quick lamb breakdown. Actually, before I started this video, I'd already pre-cut the neck and the shanks. So I cut those down to the bone, where now I'm gonna be sawing through. Looks like I need to put in a new saw blade there. Taking care just to saw through the bone and trying to finish those cuts with my knife. So that's those coming off now. Alright, once I have those off and out of the way, now I'm going to come up here to the flank. So I'm going to pull that flank down to kind of just open up that spine, and I'm actually going to pull the flank down all the way to the last rib there, taking care to be right in between the belly and the loin. So doing that on both sides. Not necessary in this step, but I find it helps to kind of open up that carcass. So when I move on to this rib break here, that's what I'm doing now. So I'm counting ribs, breaking in between the 5th and 6th. So I find that pulling those flanks down just kind of opens that up a little bit, makes it a little easier to do that break. So you see I've marked one side, now I'm counting my other side out, marking that. Now I'm gonna go ahead and break. So cutting towards the loin, I'm gonna cut towards the loin on this side. Then I'm gonna turn it and do the same cut and try to meet up with that first cut I made. Now I'm going to take my saw and I'm going to finish this cut, I'm actually going to saw through the back side. I find this helps just to avoid any tearing or ripping of the loin meat, because I still have it holding on up there at the sternum. So now here's finishing that break. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to find that vertebrae that's right there at the top of the loin, right between the loin and the sirloin. So I'm finding that vertebrae, and I'm going to make my break here. Making sure it lines up right, doing my first side, and then again cutting that second side, making sure to meet up with the first cut so I get a nice clean even break. Just popping that right off. Now I'm going to take these legs off, and I'm going to remove the tailbone. I'm going to take the trolley down first. So now here I'm just knifing through the H-bone where you have that little bit of soft bone. And then basically I'm just going to come cut down either side of the tailbone and pop those two legs apart. Then I'm going to fully remove that tailbone, and I'll have this lamb broken down into primals. So I think my main area where I could use some improvement would be working with whole beef carcass. I have a lot of experience with pork and lamb, and I have a ton of experience with bagged beef. But those whole beef carcasses is really what I want to work on more and get better at. Thank you so much for having a look. I appreciate the opportunity, and I hope to hear from you guys soon. Thank you.